Welcome to
4Kids Flashback. Hello, Steve.
Hello, Tara.
This is 4Kids Flashback, if that's not what you intended to listen to. You should stick around. You might like it.
Who knows? Yeah, this might have been just what you were looking for.
This is what you need. Today's episode, we're interviewing Darren Dunstan. We're actually recording this intro in the future, so we did interview Darren Dunstan, and he is a delight. Double D, delight.
Alliteration.
Alliteration all around. But what I wanted to say, because I have not done this enough lately, is tell you about some of the, if you like this show, hopefully, we are produced by Maji Media. Their website is Maji, MAJI.media, and they have a ton of other anime-related shows that you will probably dig. Steve, can you tell us about some of those shows? Because he is on them.
Yeah, it's where I come from. Of course, I'm a longtime co-host on the One Piece podcast, the very specific podcast, talking about everything One Piece. And there we have some of our own spin-offs there, like our Fight Together series, Opla, our series focusing on the live-action Netflix adaptation. And then we have some other series there. We have Shoujo Sunday, and old episode.
Their logo makes me hungry, by the way.
It does,
Shoujo
yeah.
Sunday.
I'm looking at it, and yeah, I want to get me one of those.
Does look delicious.
But and shows like Love Letters, and even like old podcasts that we did. Check it out. I don't want to put some of my old podcasts. I'm like, oh, these are old, okay. But you could see
the Grand Line is up there. There's a lot of One Piece stuff, and I know hopefully this is a podcast that appeals to One Piece fans. So definitely check out Maji Media. And if you like this show and just can't get enough, you're like, I need more. I'm going to listen to this episode, but then I need more. You can go to patreon.com/4kidsflashback. And I feel like a broken record, but there you get episodes early, ad-free. Our website.
4kidsflashback.com with the number 4.
There you get links to listen to our show free, links to merch, things like that. All the fun stuff. But more importantly, Darren Dunstan is going to tell us stuff and things. And listen, I love Darren for so many reasons, and I don't even know if we got into this on the podcast, but really it's our love of Golden Girls that's really bonded us. I don't know how that managed to be avoided in our interview with him, but if you want to know the way to Darren's heart, just quote Blanche. Yeah. That's it.
And then there's Maud.
Maud?
I don't know what the
That's
hell
a
am I doing.
different
That's
show.
a different show.
That is one of the actors was on. Oh, Steve.
Yeah.
Oh, we're going to have to talk after this.
Cool. I just
anyway.
made an ass of myself on a niche podcast.
No, you know what? There's no shame in not knowing all of these shows that I'm obsessed with, because I don't know the show that you are obsessed with. So now we're even.
I was just talking about I was making a reference to Laverne and Shirley last night, and I had to explain that to somebody, and I felt old explaining a show that was old for me.
Right. You were young to be watching that.
Yeah.
Okay, so after you listen to this interview with Darren, you can go Google Laverne and Shirley, which is a great show. On that note, let's let Darren entertain you. I don't know. Should we just start this thing?
Oh my gosh, I'm excited. I had to look up a couple dates and stuff to know what the hell I was talking about, but
That's good.
Did you get the email I sent you this morning?
Oh my god, I nearly was late because I was watching it. I was like, oh.
All right, well, I might keep this in. I mean, we've started talking already, but today on the podcast, we are joined by someone who played the role of Pegasus in Yu-Gi-Oh, Splinter in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Giovanni in Pokémon Live. He directed like a bazillion shows at 4Kids and does lots of voice directing of animated programs now. But the role that I enjoy saying the most is, I hope I say this right, Mongo Maca Raccoon in Viva Pinata. Welcome, Darren Dunstan.
Thank you. How's everybody?
Did I say that right? Wait, did I say
don't know.
Mongo Maca Raccoon? You don't remember playing that?
Was he a DJ or something? Or
I have no idea.
I remember playing a DJ.
I just saw that on your IMDb.
Someone's going to correct us. So.
Probably.
Yeah.
They always do.
I mean, I assume he's a raccoon who likes macaroons.
Yeah, all the character names you probably know were like half food and half animal. So like Horstachio or Elefanilla or so I was a raccoon. I think I was like
I'm gonna be honest, I didn't know. I didn't
now
look.
you know. It's a cute show.
No, wait, thank God you're here. Yeah, I do want to look at it actually. That's on my to-do list. Steve, is that lost media or do we think Viva
I couldn't tell you.
exists in the world?
Honestly, doing this podcast again, it's the first time I've heard, the title Viva Pinata in over 10 years, I'd say. So, I don't know.
Really?
I don't know if it's lost. Maybe it's just there and no one's looking for it. Who knows? Never played the game.
It lives rent-free in Darren's head.
It must be like mango raccoon, right? Because if it's like a fruit, if it's like
it
a
said Mongo on the thing.
Oh, with an O.
Well, now I'll double check. Now I'll be embarrassed if I wrote it wrong.
No, you're probably right.
It looks like I copied and pasted it out for this list, so I'm sure it's that. But it could, listen, IMDb, or IMDb is an imperfect database. So.
Well, we got Mongo. We got Mongo on IMDb, so.
Okay, the Mongo it is. I apologize.
We'll go with it.
Well, we could say if it was mango, we could say we're just pronouncing it, differently. So.
Yeah, I'm from Canada.
You say everything weird.
Yeah. I do.
But your hair does look good.
Thank you.
Also, I have the distinct pleasure of taking what I think is the best picture of you ever taken. You photograph well all the time, but I took a picture of you jumping in the air that I think should just be your picture for everything.
May I say, you were so cocky about it. You were like, yeah, just like do it. And then I was like, there's no way that we're going to be here like for 10 minutes. Luckily, there's no one at my booth. We
were at a convention.
You did it in one photo. You're gonna post it, right?
Yeah.
On
one
your thing?
One take Tara. That's what they call me.
That's what they call you. Are you wearing a Shady Pines t-shirt?
I am. I wore this in your honor.
Oh, I should have worn
So,
my Golden Girls.
Darren, what other podcast hosts wear a shirt just for you? I'm wearing my Shady Pines Golden Girls t-shirt just for you.
Steve's wearing New York Black in my honor. Just
yeah.
That's right. What does your shirt say, Steve?
My shirt is for Devitt's Farms up in the Hudson Valley.
That's where I am.
Egbert.
That's
yeah?
where he lives.
I'm in Beacon.
Oh my God, Beacon.
Yeah,
right
where
across
are you?
the river. I'm originally from I don't want to give too much away. Blooming Grove, so like on the opposite side of the river. Okay. So like near like between like Newburgh and the Woodbury
That's what I thought you were
Commons.
gonna say, because everyone from Newburgh's like I'm from Newburgh, and then everyone gasps and yeah.
Wait, why is that? Is there some like murder that happened there or something crazy? Is it haunted? Like what happened?
Is it haunted?
Why?
Steve, you want to feel this one?
it's a bit rough over there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough.
It's getting better. It's got some nice spots.
Darren, we are both wearing shirts for you.
That is so.
I didn't have my Canada flag ready, but.
Well, speaking of, I'm moving my parents into a senior's residence this coming weekend, and we're calling it Shady Pines. I mean, it's not called that. But my mom doesn't love that. Mean. But
well, don't get her a hot plate because she'll burn the place down, just like Sophia.
I want some popcorn.
All right. Is this podcast actually? This could be a Golden Girls podcast, but I guess we should talk about what we're here to talk about.
Okay.
Darren, honestly, you have my favorite origin story about how you came to work at 4Kids. Let's talk a little bit about you are a trained theater professional.
Indeed.
Born and raised in Canada.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about your theater background and how it led you to being in something Pokemon related?
Totally. So, yes, I moved from Canada to Boston to go to theater school there. And towards the end of our degree, people would come in, like casting people, directors, actors from New York, just to sort of partially to scope us out, but also to give us a master class and teach us stuff. And so this one casting director, Dave Clemens, came. Yeah, so he, soon after we moved to New York, and a handful of us from Boston, got a phone call asking if we wanted to audition for the live production of Pokemon Live. So this national tour of Pokemon Live. And like, there's like kid shows that go around. There'd be a Scooby-Doo tour or a Blue's Clues tour or whatever. And I wouldn't have thought ever to audition for it. Number one, I always assumed it was just like dancey and like fuzzy costumes. And like, that's not my skill set. However, Dave was having us in. And so, had us in, and I guess had kind of been, scoping us out all this time. And I think, 4 of us from Boston got cast in Pokemon Live. And so that was like the national tour. Radio City, Nintendo, 4Kids all co-produced it. And it started at Radio City, and then it toured. It was supposed to tour for a long time. And I think it ended up touring maybe for like 8 months.
I think forever. It was supposed to tour forever.
I hear it's still going. You
played Giovanni in the production.
Yes.
That I did get to see. You were fantastic.
We're not sure if we met, right? Like, did we?
I don't think we met that. I don't think that night we met. You were out partying and reveling in your success.
And, you know me.
I was with the cast. I found my ticket stub. I was with the cast at that show. We were just thought it was cool that they invited us because we didn't always feel that included. So we were really happy that they included us.
Right.
But I find it interesting because most of the cast was cast as like young teenage people.
Right.
And you were cast as like an older Giovanni, like a serious suit wearing, and you probably were like 21.
I mean, story of my life. I've been playing the old guy since I was the dad in my nursery school production of The Night Before Christmas. It was not a shocker. And like, the character that doesn't dance and just stand there and wear a nice suit, and that was roles I've born to play.
I like it. I watched, I did send him some footage from the original musical this morning. I did watch some of it. And I gotta say, say what we will about the show itself.
Yeah.
There are some really talented people working their asses off on that stage.
Absolutely.
Like real singer. These are talented singers and actors. Yeah.
Yeah, they've gone on to great stuff. And the dancers were like just killer dancers. I remember we for some reason we watched some of the dance calls. I don't know why I was in the room, but like, it was fierce. And like any
because
New York
dancers are cute.
We're like, can I sit in? Any theater job's competitive, right? But this was just like, well, and you know why? I think, to answer my own question, the director was actually like a real Broadway guy. Louis Perez was in the original company of Phantom and the original company of Chicago. Like he was a kick butt guy, and I think especially in the choreography world, he was a real draw for these amazing dancers who work with Anne Ranking and all this stuff. And so his goal was to create a very prestigious, like a full length musical, but with children's theme, it had varying degrees of success, I think.
Yeah, I mean. Again, I'd love to talk to a kid who saw it and hear what they thought. Because, again, we were too old. We know.
Yeah.
Seeing it, I appreciated all of your work. And in watching the documentary about the making of it, I hear how rushed they were to get it done. And I feel for the writers and these people because, I mean, listen, at that point, I think they didn't know how long the success of Pokemon was going to last. So they needed to capitalize on it as soon as possible. So
yes,
the timeline that I heard in the documentary was 6 months, which is unheard of for a Broadway
show. Just
show.
write a musical in 6 months.
Yeah. Well, they said we'd like a rough draft of Act 1 in a week and then a rough draft of Act 2 the week after. Now, I mean, you and I both know people who write Broadway musicals.
Yeah.
They take years to write.
Yeah. Well, maybe that's why the guy who wrote it was Michael Slade, who's passed away, and he's a soap opera writer. So maybe that's why they chose someone who is so used to just
speed.
like cranking stuff out on the fly. He wrote for One Life to
Oh,
Live
and he
for a
did
long
it.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so interesting. That's a great point.
Maybe.
Do you ever find yourself singing the songs like all of a sudden like one of the songs from that show will just appear in your brain?
Typically no, although right before this morning you sent me a clip of and I just happened to like scroll to one song and now I have it in my head. I mostly just wanted to get reminded what the puppetry was like, and like because I was like, was it really like Lion King spectacular? And it wasn't. It was vivid, and they looked like the Pokemon. But anyways, I think we might have been limited with what we could travel with and budget wise what we had.
Did you have any of that heavy lifting, like with the puppets and all that stuff, or were you just able to like look good in your suit and go around and like walk around and sing?
That's a funny question. The only thing was at the very beginning of the show, the three sort of serious characters, me, Professor Oak, and Ash's mom, Mrs. Ketchum, they dressed us up in these like I guess we were mid-20s, but we still felt way too old for this stuff. These like puffy vests, and like they'd raided an Old Navy and put us in these bright colors and bucket hats and shit, and then put us at the back of the stage with like these winged creatures. So we like had this like harness and like just like, and honestly, it was the most fun part of the show because the three of us were such goofballs, me and Dee and Patrick, and we would just stare at each other and howl. I guess we were singing at the time, but like we're at the back of the stage, we're out of our depth, everyone's dancing around us, and then I'd run off stage and get into my Giovanni costume and do my thing for the rest of the show.
And was some stuff pre-recorded in that show? Like were the Pokemon voices themselves? So were you working with a track? How did that work?
Yeah, all the solo characters sang live, but all the like background vocal chorus stuff was recorded. I think all the ensembles sang along, but I think they relied heavily on the records. And we also had the option to lip sync if we wanted to. Like all our all our tracks were laid down that if we were sick one day, like I could just get up there and lip sync to myself if I wanted to. And I did it once. I did it one time, and
That's the opposite of live theater.
I felt Pokemon live. In quotes.
Live, it's in the name. Wait, so
I felt so dirty. I felt so dirty doing it, and it was in Toronto, which is where I'm from. And my aunt happened to come that day, and I didn't tell her, but I felt so bad. I was like, I didn't even sing live for her. I'm a jerk.
Wait, is it because you were having a bad throat day? Or?
Yeah, I was just in rough vocal shape. But
was there a live orchestra with this show?
No, it was all like tracked, just tracked, and like the crew was amazing. They were like we'd hang out with them, and like they were like union professional, like I get this lady gets Christmas cards from Robert Goulet, and she puts my mic on, and this sound guy is like, it was like hardcore professionals who probably thought we were just a bunch of like 20-something dum-dums fooling around. But
do you keep in touch with anyone from that time?
Yes. So I keep in touch.
Do you have a scrapbook? Is there a scrapbook?
You know what? I have photos somewhere. I'll scan them and send them to you. Mostly just us behind the scenes, drunk at a bar type of thing. But it was so fun. I still talk to Patrick, who was Professor Oak, because we went to college together, and
he's in the docuseries.
Oh yeah,
he's in the documentary.
He is the nicest man in the world, and we also did the next tour I did right after that. We did together too, which him, and then I text with like the lead guy, the guy who played Ash, the woman who played Mrs. Ketchum, Lauren who played Jessie. I kept in touch a little bit. Andrew who played James, we text a little bit. That's probably kind of it, but it was fun. I mean, first.
Well, I guess the question. The question is, who did you like better, your Pokemon live cast or your Pokemon the TV show cast? If if you had to just pick one, just saying, one of them is right here and the others are not.
Yes. I mean, that Mudkip, whoever played Mudkip was just the best. She used to fall over a lot.
Okay, so he's referring to the time. Shit. You tell it.
Can I tell a story? So we were working on, I think it was Fighting Foodons, right? Where
probably
Tara was the lead character and was in the booth for like hours at a time. She's in the booth alone. She's like locked in there basically.
It's a small, tiny little booth.
A tiny room. And I'm like, I think I'm fishing through my script looking for the next cue, and the sound engineer's doing whatever. And all of a sudden we hear this huge thud. And I look up and Tara's on the floor. Then she claims she was pushed.
I think I said you're like, what am I going? I was pushed. No, I think I was playing. I was trying to do something with the headphone wire and like reconfigure something, and I tripped over it. Listen, it's not that far-fetched to go back to another Pokemon theme. Far-fetched. Isn't that a Pokemon?
Yes.
I am very klutzy. It does nothing about it.
It's hilarious.
Surprises me.
I
am proud of my comeback line.
I was pushed. Oh my god.
Okay, but see, we have jumped ahead, and
Shoot.
I never asked you this. I don't think I ever asked you or Andrew this. You two were the only ones I knew of from the theater show that ended up working at the 4Kids offices. Is that correct?
Pretty much, yeah. I think there was one actress who worked on, I think, Cubics for a little bit, but then she went on a tour or something and had to be recast or something like that. But I think it was just the two of us that they.
So how does that happen? Did they reach out to you, or did you reach out to them once the tour was finished?
Yeah, they reached out. I mean, I think the timing was like pretty much immediately after that. Andrew got cast on Cubics. Maybe there was even some overlap with the end of the tour in that, because that was one of the first shows ever there. And then when they were casting Yu-Gi-Oh, because like Yu-Gi-Oh, the tour ended in the winter of 2001, and Yu-Gi-Oh aired in fall of 2001. So within that period, it must have been, hey, we're casting this new show. Come on in and read for it. Auditioned for Pegasus, got the part, and we started recording. So I think they also made the parallel, like, oh, he's the bad guy in this show. Why don't we have him audition for the bad guy in this show?
Oh, yeah. So when you were on the tour, were you thinking, oh, it would be cool to do voiceovers for Pokemon, or was that really not on your radar at all?
It really wasn't. And, like, I think part of it was being from Canada, and, like, when you go to school in the States, you're given, like, a 1-year visa basically to like try to stay in the country. And so I think my goal was very much to like, I got to get more theater gigs. I got to like, nail this thing down so that I can get an O1 visa, which is for extraordinary ability, so that I could, get my resume as padded as possible to be able to stay in the country. And so pivoting to voiceover was never on my radar. Little did I know.
And here you are today. So you get cast in Yu-Gi-Oh, and you're hanging out once in a while at the 4Kids offices.
Sure.
How long after that does the transition to director? And we'll go back into your voiceover work, but how soon after that are you directing?
Yeah, I think about a year. Like I remember, when I was directing there. When I was acting there, they also like sort of signed me up to do some sort of preparation administrative stuff. They were like, hey, we're going to acquire a bunch of shows soon that's for the Fox box, this Fox window of time, and back when cartoons run Saturday mornings. Would you be interested in directing? We're not going into production yet, full blast, but take a look at this stuff. And that's where Fighting Foodons came from.
But had you expressed an interest in directing? Like,
No.
I'm just so confused. So it just happened. They just were like, hey, you.
I think it was Eric Stewart.
You look good in a suit. Okay.
I think it was Eric Stewart who suggested me for it. I'm guessing they were looking for people, and they were like, oh, Andrew, Darren, I forget who else at the time, but they were like, they might be good people to throw into the pool for whatever reason. Maybe, I think I'm a pretty fairly buttoned up person. Maybe that's why. Maybe they thought I would have access to actors. I don't know, but they gave me the shot. And so I started to sit in on Yu-Gi-Oh sessions and watch how Eric worked, which taught me a lot, and also to get to know you crazies. And then thrown into the pool for Fighting Foodons. Luckily, Fighting Foodons was chock full of brilliant, experienced people like yourself who probably guided me more than I guided you.
I doubt it. I feel like we were all learning together still. I still feel like that.
You were on the floor most of the time.
But I was on the floor most. But I did realize in researching you. No, what I never had thought of before is, except for Jim Malone, who had been directing some anime before, I think all of the voice directors at 4Kids, it was their first time voice directing. You and Eric and Andrew and Chris Collet. It's not like anyone had they didn't seek out until Ninja Turtles. They did not have an experienced voice director on staff, except for Jim,
right?
I guess.
And especially in New York.
Which is a bold move.
It is, but especially in New York, I to this day, I can still sort of name only a handful of voice directors, people who do this full time, and I guess it is sort of a niche job that I didn't know existed. I'm sure most, a lot of your listeners never knew existed. And it's a very specific job that the only way you can kind of learn it is on the job training. You know what I mean? For both dub stuff and prelay stuff, which then came later, which was another sort of harsh, extreme education.
Yeah. No, I mean, it is remarkable that you guys all did take to it. I mean, or maybe there were other people we didn't meet that just didn't take to it, so we never ended up working with them.
We don't speak of them.
We don't talk about them. They're dead to us. So, okay, let's rewind in time. You get cast as Pegasus. What does the celebration look like for that?
I think I was confused more than anything. I was like, I don't know how long this is gonna last. Is he, I guess I would ask questions like, so is he's sort of like the main bad guy? Like, is he gonna stick around? Then you kind of learn, you get called for a couple episodes, then he might disappear for a bit, and then he's back. And I was like, okay, I'm just gonna ride this wave.
Then he kidnaps Mokuba, then he goes away again.
I didn't know. And honestly, to this day, I don't know whether a show I work on is going to be a hit or a failure. So, it was kind of just, I know they did Pokemon and that has a good pedigree. Let's see where this goes. And it turns out that ratings were good, whatever those numbers mean, and cards are selling. And so it's going to keep on going. It was sort of, I remember, Canadian Thanksgiving of 2001. I got a VHS copy of episode 2, which was Pegasus's first big episode, and I took it home and we went up to the cottage and with my aunt and my aunt who came to Pokemon Live, and I lip sync.
You didn't sing for
Aunt Teresa, I'm sorry. And my parents, and we all sat down to watch it, and crickets. They had no idea what they had just watched, what kind of crazy thing this was. They were relatively polite, but it was also okay.
I mean, I was gonna say, for Canadians to not pretend to love something, and
it says a lot.
It's the silence that hurts the most. Yeah.
Wow. No, and listen. Again, they were not the target demographic.
Correct.
I think that is fair.
Yeah.
and I mean, I think that with a lot of these shows, they really were for children. I think some of the jokes in Pokemon, they wanted to work on 2 levels for adults too, like some of the Jesse and James humor. But some of these other shows, you had to want the cards and the toys. You had to commit fully to this thing.
Yeah.
It wasn't like your parents didn't like it on in the background. They weren't.
Right.
Kids did eat it up though. It served a purpose.
And even the gameplay element, to this day, when I go to cons, my brain just doesn't work like that. I can't memorize the paragraph of information about a card and how it can and can't be used and how many points it's worth. I'm trying to think of what to buy for dinner. I can't fathom memorizing all those. Maybe that comes with youth, that our brains work better then.
I think it does. Well, luckily, we have our resident youth here to answer this for us.
Well, I was going to say, the key is you play it on TV. That's the whole point.
You fake it.
Were you playing the Pokemon card game, the Yu-Gi-Oh card game? Were you involved in all aspects of those properties?
Yeah, like I played, I think, more of Yu-Gi-Oh than I did the Pokemon one. I think Pokemon was just like, everyone was collecting it. And I think Pokemon was easy enough to pick up. Yu-Gi-Oh, yeah, I think I think it comes down to youth. You got to have the motivation, and I mean, the world hasn't gotten you down yet to learn all those games. But then again, I don't know. There's people my age that are like still playing these games, so I don't know. I think I could understand though, for like a generation that did not come up with this kind of stuff. It's intimidating, and and you're more familiar with the modern Yu-Gi-Oh stuff than I am, but I see some of the rules on like the newer cards, and I'm like, no, I'm not even gonna try. I can't process that. So I can relate to that in some way.
Were you a kid when Yu-Gi-Oh came out?
Yeah, I kind of was still. I was in the cusp of the Target demo when Yu-Gi-Oh was out, and I remember watching. I remember watching it. I remember it started up, and before you knew it, it was not just on Saturdays; it was on weekdays. It was everywhere, and it's like it's iconic.
Yeah, they ran with it.
Yeah.
I think it's like a foreign language, like learning these card games. They're harder to learn as an adult. Like you have more space in your brain for memorization and all that. I mean, I look at my friends' kids; they know every fact about every Pokemon.
Wow.
And I'm like, but he also knows every fact about dinosaurs. You know what I mean? So like, his brain is also being put to good, useful use.
Right.
And maybe if he's a paleontologist, but kids just have a capacity for that, and they soak it up. And then my friends yell at me and are like, get this Pokemon out of our house.
You're like, but it pays my bills.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Where should we pick back up, Darren?
Oh my gosh.
And you do have a box of tissues ready in case
Make me cry.
There's crying.
Make me cry.
Yeah. So you were in the office, I guess, more than a lot of us were, even in those early days, because you were doing the administrative stuff.
Yeah.
Can you talk about like the office culture? Was it a fun place to work? Again, I just feel like I showed up, said my lines, and left.
You were a legend. People loved you.
Yeah, that's right. I spent some time in like the lunchroom so I could hang out for a little bit more time because it might have been cold out.
You were there on pizza day, bagel day, whenever the soda was delivered.
Soda was important. Was there a pizza and a bagel day?
Yeah. So bagel day
I didn't know that.
was Fridays, even until COVID. I think they were still doing Bagel Day Fridays.
Well, you mean still like the Konami that is in the space where 4Kids?
Yes, 4Kids,
was.
which evolved into 4K, which evolved into Konami. They still have that same office. And then when Ninja Turtles started, Pizza Wednesdays came to be. And,
oh, right.
Yeah, and that
I do now vaguely remember.
That lasted for a while until it didn't. But you're right. I was there full time, which I don't know, was really my personality suits that. Like as much as I love creative stuff, and I moved to New York to become an actor, like having secure work that I could do in between acting gigs was good for me. That sort of suits my personality. So it was nice to go somewhere every day. They were so good to me. Like the Norman and Kathy, and Norman has an assistant named Diana who I was thinking about recently, and just like she treated me so well. I don't know why. I knew nothing about computers or Excel or any of that
learning
stuff
on the fly, like you said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my God. I bothered so many people. Like, how do I combine cells? I have no idea how to. Anyways,
But it was a very young office. I feel like there were a lot of people in your position just figuring it out and learning how to do all this stuff.
Yeah, it was a cool combination of, they'd hired certain people to produce shows, to executive produce, who had a lot of experience, like Carol Weitzman or Lloyd Goldfine, or people who have a history in the animation business, or a history in, running production. They'd hire some really strong people, and then a lot of us, we're just sort of cutting our teeth. I guess there was something cool about having a younger kind of vibe that sort of kept people eager to learn and hope that would, I guess, transfer into the energy of the shows and stuff. But it was exciting and fun. Like I shared. I had cubicles with Chris Calais and Andrew Rannells and Ted Lewis. Like, we were all in the same, which was a horrible mistake to put us all in the same, like, quadrangle or whatever. We just made a lot of trouble and got shushed a lot. But it was a hoot. It was like, I think Andrew said this once, it was like playing Office for a while. It's just like...
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, I always thought it was funny to see you guys at a desk. Like... Right. Like, I was like, wait a minute. What?
This makes no sense.
Especially, like, when Jim Malone got an office, I was like, what? No.
That's funny. My perception of him, even though he was, like, a rollerblading, like,
guitar playing.
Yeah, Mac. He used a Mac where everyone else used a PC. He was like, he did just see, I just took him as sort of just a producer type. I didn't really realize that he was more of that he was new to that. He was,
right.
A loose guy, but...
Well, I've been curious because, again, I saw Norman once in a while, and he seemed like a suit to me, an older suit. But again, I realized he was not that much older than us.
Isn't that weird?
I don't think I ever... Yeah, it's very weird. And that's a big company to be responsible for at a young age. And I think about that a lot, and I'm excited to ask him about that. But I don't know that I ever met Al Khan. Was Al Khan present a lot while you were there?
Not a ton, but, I definitely knew him and met him a handful of times. Pokemon Live.
Was he a good hugger? I'm just kidding.
No comment. He would be around for Pokemon Live. He would, he'd be in the office, especially if there was a tour. 4Kids had an uptown office in the, I don't know, it was in the 50s or something.
Yeah, on the east side, I think.
Yeah. So he had his main office there, at least most of the time. I think at one point towards the end, he had an office on 23rd Street there, but so he'd be around mostly if there was a tour or he wanted to, we would oftentimes we'd get the alert that, like, okay, a tour's coming through, and so there'd be this, like, dog and pony show where they'd go to an Avid room and see things being edited, and then they'd swing into the Pro Tools room and watch me directing someone, and then they'd go over to watch something getting mixed, and they go to the music room and watch something getting scored, and we got
Now, these tours, let's talk about the tours,
Yeah.
because I did not know this was going on. And I've heard that sometimes they were, like, groups of school kids. I heard that Robert De Niro came in for a tour.
Yeah.
Like, who else was there? Give us the list.
I think that's the only,
crazy
like,
to me.
celebrity that came that I remember, as far as wanting to see the facility. But he brought his son, I remember. But there were tours constantly, even up until COVID. Mostly, it'd be like, some of the staff from the Japan Konami office are here. Like, they're new at the LA office and they happen to be in New York. They get a tour and just sort of get seen around.
Okay.
I'm sure there were outside people, potential what's the word, sponsors, or people who I'm sure they wanted to show it off to.
Advertising people,
contest winners, kids would come, or people who, the kids of maybe the higher exec types would come and sit in and be bored out of their tree because the dubbing process is so slow. You know what I mean?
Right.
Why?
They thought it was going to be exciting. Yeah.
Like, can't we just watch?
Yeah.
You're doing the same line over and over and over again, but. It was cute, and it was always like we had to dress better I think we just knew to dress better that day and to, like, not swear and be professional.
And do you remember auditioning for Yu-Gi-Oh? Do you remember the actual, like, audition?
I do. Yeah. It was over in Pro Tools 1, which was, you go down the hall and then you veer left. Do you know there's?
This is an audio podcast, so yeah.
But
no one sees how you're pointing and describing. No, I'm joking. I'm just fucking with you. It's so funny, I vaguely remember, like, if you showed me a picture of it, I think I would remember. But the only studio I remember is the one where it joined another studio, and people had to walk through your session
Yeah.
to get to the other room.
Right. Yeah. That was well,
That was poor planning.
yeah, 2 different sets of rooms had that. Like to get through to Pro Tools 3, you had to go through 1. To get to 4, you had to go through 2. And there's the awkward knock on the door, and then you're like annoyed that someone's interrupting your session, and then the actors start talking to each other. And
Yeah, I'm guessing this happened a bunch. I was gonna say, this must have-
constantly,
All the time.
constantly.
Because, like, someone would just be, like, in their session and have to go to the bathroom.
Right.
Or, like, they'd be on a break. And then you were in a flow, like, you might be in the middle of a line. Or
Yeah, or I'm holding auditions, and like every 10 minutes, someone is going through. Like coming through. Yep, excuse me, coming through.
So you
Audition.
go down the hallway to the left.
Yeah, to the left. And there were 2. I think I just did 2 auditions. I think I just did an audition and a callback. And was put in the booth with the TV screen, and never had done that before, because when you're dubbing, of course, you've got this music stand with your script, and then you've got the TV screen so you can watch what Pegasus is up to as you're recording. And then in the booth the first time was definitely Eric, the voice director, the engineer. Eric Stewart. The engineer might have been like
Probably Sean.
Should have been
You don't think it
Sean
was Sean?
Conrad, or I wondered about Ohad. Do you remember Ohad?
Possibly. I think Sean told us that he was that he was around for that, but I'm not positive. It could have, the day you were there, he could have been in another studio.
It could have been him,
So.
for sure. You don't get the copy until you show up. So I think I knew vaguely what type of character I was auditioning for, but you make really quick decisions, like looking at the what he looks like, and the script is both sort of evil and funny and diva and all that stuff. So you're like, okay, let's throw something at the wall. And I remember there was one line that I remember made Eric chuckle a little bit. Like I remember he smiled or chuckled, and then I was like, oh, I think I did a good job. Like I felt good, and that was that. And I don't know if with youth or just with not knowing what this whole animation thing was, or how important Yu-Gi-Oh might have been, I kind of just sort of like let it go. You leave, and do you find this? Some auditions you leave and you think about constantly, and some you're just like, I did it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's usually the ones. I mean, it's the opposite. Usually, it's the ones that you don't think you booked that you did. So but you felt good leaving.
Yeah,
there.
the fact that like Eric, this
that's
sort
cool.
of like potentially serious fella, laughed. I was like, okay, that's cool. So then I got called for a callback where we recorded some more scenes, and I think these scenes, they were different scenes, and there was definitely some dueling, so some like intense stuff that was, fierce and vindictive and loud. And that time, the producer was there as well, Lloyd Goldfine, who I love. He's such a great guy and such a wonderful producer.
Aww.
And same thing, there was another moment where I think it was an off-camera line, and because I was off camera, I was like, I may as well add something. And like I think it was just a chuckle or a Pegasus-y laugh that I added, and that made them laugh too. Or it might have been just some weird like condescending sigh or something, and they laughed, and I was like, okay, this is the key. Is like he's the comic relief of the show in some ways, and yeah, so that kind of hooked me into him, and then I got the part. So
yeah,
away we went.
And
thank you for sharing that, because I was curious, because like really when Pegasus is first introduced, like there is some campiness to him, but he's very intimidating, especially in that second episode. And I was just like curious, and I'm like, did all of you know like eventually his whole theming is like just a bunch of cartoon characters that that's his deck. And because it play like eventually it was so fitting, because he goes from that into then at that point he's so over the top. I'm always curious to know, like, and I think it probably varies from director to director, but I'm curious if like how far into the show like Eric was aware of.
Right. Yeah.
And I don't know. I don't know how far in advance you as a director like kind of watch a show
I feel
before
like, Yeah, I think and even to this day it's kind of the same. It's always been, we're like, I'm a little ahead of the actors, and sure, some episodes have probably aired in Japan, so I could even go online and find out what the plots of certain episodes were, but I'm only given a certain chunk of episodes at a time, say maybe like 15 they'll throw at me, so I can try to get ahead, but still don't necessarily know the end game of some of the characters, which is like frightening as both an actor and a director. Like, oh, he's all of a sudden he's got all these like cartoon monsters, and all of a sudden he kidnapped a boy, and then he has a wife who died, and it's like, okay, you just sort of take it as they come, and I'm pumping the director for information as an actor. I as a director, I'm pumping asking the producers or the certain gurus at Konami who know a lot about Yu-Gi-Oh and what's to come. I'm constantly sort of fishing for details from them so I can keep the actors informed. They're always maybe a little leery because we're not supposed to leak any of this stuff, but I want the actors to have as much knowledge as they can. Like, oh, you're acting like this because in 12 episodes we learned that you were spying on the main character, stuff like that. Right. It's important, right, Tara?
Yeah, I'm curious either back then or today if you're ever encouraged to read the manga to have a storyline just made clear, even if it's a rough version. I mean,
I can't read real good, so I don't.
I've seen you read.
Oh, you. No, I don't. I've never done that, but I've definitely, gone to Yu-Gi-Oh fan sites, Yu-Gi-Oh Pedia or whatever it's called. I'm honestly, which it's weird that I have to do that, but I do a lot of digging as to find out, like, because sometimes the actors are even ahead of me. Occasionally, an actor who's gone that extra mile and illegally found those, future episodes, they're like, did you know that? And I'm like, yeah, isn't that crazy?
We talked to Susie Goldish about this. As a director, back then you were directing people like me who did not grow up watching anime and knew nothing about it. Today you are directing often anime fans, people who grew up with this and who have an idea in their head of what anime American style is what's the difference in the directing process?
I've in the past found that intimidating a little bit. Like, I don't watch a lot of anime in my free time, mostly because I work all day in cartoons. That
it feels like work.
Yeah, at the end of the day, you just want to like turn on something else. And so in some ways, I look at other directors or actors who are so passionate about it and have such a breadth of knowledge about that, and I felt bad about it. But I also know that like I'm doing the best I can. I'm trying to honor the medium. I'm trying to like push us a little further forward, and I think it has come a long way with the quality of work we do as actors and directors. And I also consider that like I'm bringing a fresh point of view to it.
Yeah.
Maybe I don't want it just to be what it's been, and that like coming from a musical comedy background or just my Golden Girls sensibility, like how much of that, how much of me can I throw in there, and also let the actors throw bits of them in there too.
Right. Well, I think also I know I can only speak for myself, but I feel safer having a director who I know has also been an actor. I feel like that's the biggest asset that you have is that you understand what it's like to be an actor, especially in that booth.
Yeah.
And can come at it from that point of view, because again, at the end of the day, this is an acting job. It's just stylistically different than other jobs.
Right. And I think what you're saying, is true, and I think it's twofold. It's like I know what it's like to be an actor as far as like the techniques and the theater school dialogue that we all learned, and like how to that actors often need to be approached from different angles. Maybe it's from the outside in, maybe it's from the inside out, maybe you're a little more methody, maybe you don't want any of that terminology and it's just about feelings and impulses. So there's that element of it, like technically how to approach them, and then there's the emotional side of it too, that like I know what it's like to be locked in a booth with a pane of glass and there's like a team of people staring at you and talking about you and you can't hear it, like there's you've had a bad day or you come in, like I think I know what it's like from that angle as well, and I have so much empathy for that.
We talked a little bit separately, Darren, you and I talked a little bit about the work we did back then versus the work we're doing now, since it's been more years than I like to think about. I was saying that I watched some of my old stuff on 4Kids, and I'm like, ooh, I'm a terrible actor.
Blame the director.
Yeah, I'm gonna blame the director. But no, I mean, is some of that old stuff hard for you to watch? How do you think you've evolved as a director and an actor? I assume you're still doing some acting on these shows, or is that incorrect?
Yeah, I'm still doing acting. Not in the current Yu-Gi-Oh stuff, although I'm hoping to in the sort of maybe the next one. But other stuff, video games and stuff at different companies and stuff. But yeah, I don't know why I saw a Dinosaur King clip the other day, which was a show I directed. Oh yeah, someone had reached out and were like, "Do you know who played these characters?" And I was like, "Send me a clip and I'll tell you." And I watched it, and even then, where I thought that must have been like late 2000s, right? I thought I was a good director. There was still moments where I was like, "Oh, I guess that's going to be the rest of our lives." Like
everybody's. Yeah. I mean, I remember you as being a great director. Like there were people I looked forward to working with.
Yeah.
Sorry, Steve, you were going to say something.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, like, that's being an artist. It's kind of the curse is, people will appreciate the work that you do, but you're always gonna see all the cracks and everything that went into making it, and knowing your skills currently, it's like, I could have done that so much better.
Yeah.
It's kind of you gotta have to let it go. Yeah.
Even this current show, Yu-Gi-Oh! Sevens, which I think the last episodes just are on Hulu now. I listened to a snippet, and there was like one like sort of inflection read that was happening a lot, and I was like, gosh, like, there's still room for me to improve, and like don't have people do that read anymore. You know what I mean? Like it was a and I was like, not every, anyways. I can constantly.
I fall into that. I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah.
Sometimes we're not gonna. The way we work, it's when you're directing a show that's new animation, you're hearing if it sounds repetitive pattern-wise.
Yeah.
When we're working alone, sometimes we fall into those patterns, and we're not watching a playback of it, and we're not getting called back in to redo a line usually.
Right.
And I do tend to. I could beat myself up for doing that, but.
And I'm usually sort of,
it just happens.
When I get a script, I'll sort of look through it. And you do, as a director, you do kind of have an idea of probably what you think the lines are going to sound like, the cadence of them, although I love when actors do something different and surprise me. But I think as a director, it's kind of my responsibility to have a plan, especially if the actor's like flailing or doesn't get it or, but yeah, you can still sort of fall into those traps where you're like, oh, I kind of let that cadence on that sentence sound kind of like that sentence 2 separate sentences later, and it's tough because we're all recording separately, but it's my job.
Yeah, and I think there's also like a preconceived idea of what anime acting is. That I think when I look at the early 4Kids stuff, I think we were doing our version of what anime acting was,
right.
And it wasn't right or wrong, good or bad, whatever you think of it. I think in my head that was my, and yeah. I don't know if you agree or not, but
yeah, I think oftentimes even now there's like people think I'm doing a cartoon, and so you can, even people I know who have like years of experience in Shakespeare or theater, and yeah, it's somehow this medium they think means they can not go deep, even if like that I want it to sound organic. The subtler we can get, the better. When we get to the dueling stuff, of course it needs to be big and intense. Let's use all the other scenes to find the most like natural, relaxed, possible exchange of dialogue that we can. And thankfully, like Shane, my producer, loves that too. Like it's kind of where I think we've taken the show in a lot of ways. So to me, I'm proud of that journey, because like you said, we listened back to Fighting Foodons, which I haven't, but I'm sure there'd be times where like
yeah, I have the DVD of it. I haven't watched it. I'm gonna give it to Steve to watch because I don't think I can handle
Bless
it.
you, Steve.
But I'm sure I'm terrible at it.
You'll-
Like I don't know.
Oh.
I'll let you
I-
know what padded room they put me in once I have
Yeah.
seen it all.
So I two questions and I don't want to forget them. One, Amy Birnbaum did a pretty good impression of you as a director. She's talked about how much she loved working with you, but she goes, Darren would sometimes say, "That was great. That was perfect. I loved it. Now do it again, totally differently."
That's Michael Hagney. That's not me.
That maybe it was, but it was funny because I do feel like that is what I get so much, and it's like that is a typical
gosh, that's
director line, but it makes sense because you did like it, but then you need a safety take first of all.
Yeah.
Like you need a backup take, and honestly, you might use the first take,
Right.
but hey, just for shits and giggles, do another
Yeah.
one. Let's see what comes out. Yeah,
Especially with,
but it was funny to hear her do that.
Especially with prelay stuff, like where the animation hasn't happened yet. Alts are so important. Like so often down the road, 6 months later, the animators are like, "We really think this scene should be more intense," and then you're like, "Okay, we'll choose, take 4A instead of 4B," and we rely on that stuff a lot for sure, especially in prelay.
That's a good segue.
Yeah.
What was your? Didn't you have another question,
Or did you have another
Well,
question, Tara?
I did have one other question.
I'm going to put a pin in mine.
Put a pin in it because I don't want you to forget because this is still on the same track. Since you have worked on a show like Yu-Gi-Oh for all these years, and we will talk about your other shows, have you, because they're not aimed at a Saturday morning audience anymore, is there a big difference in what gets censored and what doesn't? And is the show different for you to work on in that way?
No, they still there's still a pretty super vigilant, careful approach as far as standards and practices is concerned. Like for instance, the episodes, the Yu-Gi-Oh! 7's episodes air on Hulu, but they also air on one of the Disney networks, and so I think that has caused things to stay very, very careful. I mean, careful as far as like if a monster needs their dress to be hiked up or down, or you know what I mean, or we're definitely hyper vigilant about just how a society is evolving, and like not just not using words like guys or just little stuff like that I'm glad we do. I think it's keeping it at a really good caliber. So
okay, now ask your segue question. So sorry.
Because you're talking about prelay now. I'm curious because Ninja Turtles was a very unique experience for a lot of you because that was the rare chance that you got to be in the booth with your fellow actors, and I'm
right.
curious to hear what some of your experiences were working on Ninja Turtles.
Yeah.
Did any of them fall?
Probably. I mean, Greg just like leaned against the wall for hours at a time and didn't do anything. It was a very different experience. We sort of knew each other, the four turtles and I, but it was cool to just be all on an even sort of acting plane with them. I think the goal was to have them, play off of each other and enjoy their loose goofball atmosphere, which they totally did. I think it was a great chemistry too, because like Wayne and Greg were already good friends, and they were sort of the most goofball-y of them all, so they weren't afraid to go for that. Whereas Mike, who played Leonardo, was new. We didn't really know him, but he played the sort of most buttoned-up turtle, and then Sam embraced his inner nerd for that, the Donatello stuff. So I think it was great. I think at times they included Splinter. If Splinter had a lot of lines, other times I would just record separately, because that often he was the one who just sort of stopped the goofball stuff. He wasn't part of the banter necessarily. But yeah, and we would have like a table read beforehand. It was all this sort of new stuff that we'd never had at 4Kids before. The pizza, the aforementioned pizza. Yeah.
And Steve is as a storyboard artist, a professional storyboard artist, cool. And one of the cool things about the 4Kids offices was that the artists were right there. And I don't know many places where that even happens today, where like I would pass by an artist in the hallway.
Yeah.
Or it was so unique to that space.
It was awesome to get to know these people, and like I think we kind of got to know each other before we really saw each other's talents. Like it took me a bit before I was actually like, holy, you actually drew that? Like they're at their, it was in this sort of separate wing of the building that was part of the floor, but and I knew a couple people there, but like just sort of peering over and just seeing their creative process, and I don't know, it was a really cool atmosphere. It was the most alive, it's so cheesy to say, that the building ever felt. It's cool.
One of the interesting things 4Kids did on the Ninja Turtles production was to hire a voice director based in Los Angeles to voice direct the show. Was that the first time you had worked with an outside director? Because it's a very different way of working. And as a director, I'm sure you were taking notes and listening to how Sue Blue directed everybody.
Yeah. I mean, this legend, Sue Blue, who talk about energy, just like the sparkle that she I'm using a lot of cheesy motifs today, but yeah, just the energy that she brought, and knowing her history on Turtles. She actually came out for the first episode or two, came out to New York, so we had a face-to-face sort of connection right from the start, which I think was important, and just charmed the pants off of all of us. And yeah, she was such a pleasure, and really collaborative too. I think a show should have strong opinions, and I think she had her opinions brought to the table. The director of animation, I think, had a lot of sort of strong opinions, and they collaborated quite well, which isn't always easy, right? Especially if you're in the same room ish at the same time, in front of, we can all hear you, like mom and dad are not fighting, like it was all very well handled. So yeah, and she directed most of the seasons, I think.
Did you do some directing on Turtles?
I directed all the ADR, so anything that we did in post. Yeah, in ADR, there's always line changes, tweaks, some rereads, even though I think a lot of that we got right the first time, and then a ton of Walla, which those boys were like incredible at. Like, I tell the story a lot where like there'd be like, say, a minute, which is a really long time of an action sequence that the turtles are like going from their lair, jumping over buildings, confronting the Shredder, fighting some ninja, and then escaping. And like someone like Wayne, you could put him in record, not to be lazy, but like you could put him in record, and just in one take he would just like, he'd be like 3 frames late, so it could all just be like boop, shuffled into perfect place, but like it just startlingly amazing at the Walla.
I mean, and that was a group of people who all had theater backgrounds, really, when you look at that cast.
Yeah.
And I think that's not a coincidence.
So, like, create 4 different, like, Greg is very much an on-camera person. Wayne is a Shakespeare guy. Sam was a child actor, and Mike went
Broadway star as a child actor.
Gavroche. And Mike
Michael
was like
Sinter-Nicholas and his dance background.
And LaGuardia High School for the Performing Arts, like 4 really different upbringings, but we all came together.
Oh.
And Scotty Ray.
Is that your invitation? Let me hear you do his voice.
I can't go that low, but I'm going to be away August 12th to 14th. He was always the best at telling you his like away dates.
His schedules. Yeah. This hadn't occurred to me before today, but, you and Andrew were both recruited from being in the cast of a musical. There was a lot of music happening at 4Kids. Were you ever included on, like, background singing? I know there was a group of 3 women who would get called in. Was that an asset to have you guys there as professional singers?
I was one of those women. No, we were in. John Siegler, who wrote all the and musical directed Pokémon Live, also did all the music scoring.
Everything. He did everything.
Oh my gosh, you name it. So I grew up as a musician, so like we hit it off right from the start. I'm very good at sight reading, all that stuff. So like he would have me in for a lot of stuff, which was great. I sang the Fighting Foodon's theme song with.
Wait, you're in that?
There's 4 of us. There's me, Dominic, who played Ash in the tour of Pokemon, and then 2 of my other friends, Lindsay and Kate from college, and we're the theme song for Fighting Foodons.
I had no idea that was you. I love that. And that theme song gets a lot of love, actually.
Really?
Yeah, because, well, it's just, I mean, obviously, it's not original music.
Yeah.
It's the can,
It was
right?
probably
Is that what it
free
is?
for them. Yeah, off of Bach. Probably free
Yeah.
for them to acquire.
But the recording is great. Like, the vocals are really good in it.
Oh my god, we were so excited to like be a part of that. And then Pegasus was on the Yu-Gi-Oh album. I got to do a track written by Wayne. I forget Wayne's last name, but this fabulous musician.
Gretzky. Wayne
Oh, yeah.
Gretzky.
Keeping it Canadian.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got to sing on that. And yeah, so there'd be all these cool, like a Funky Cops episode I got to sing in. Foodons, I got to sing in that. So anyways,
I'd be damned if I didn't ask you about this particular song. Do you remember doing the 4Kids national anthem?
Tara, did you get to work on that?
I didn't, but I've seen clips. It's pretty phenomenal.
Oh my gosh, it was like it was hilarious. They had like scheduled a handful of actors, me, Michelangelo, some Winx people, whatever, and then they kind of just didn't. They kind of had us just do the whole song. You know what I mean? And so, they were like, we want Splinter to do the song, and I was practicing it on my own, and I don't know, it didn't make sense. Like this gravelly voice would like sing it all, and so I was like, what if like, do you think we could try like maybe where he's like a little operatic, like maybe he's had some sort of like some like serious singing training, and so we tried it, and then especially when it got to is it called the bridge of the song, the Rockets Red Glare, that part, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
That's where it sort of suited it the best, and that's the part they kept in and had me do, which is this operatic Splinter bridge. It was a hoot. It was like a couple takes, everyone was howling, and that was it. So many good singers though in the shows. Like I guess that's what New York's great for casting wise, is like everyone from Broadway works in animation too.
Yeah. Did you have a follow-up to? Sorry.
No, I knew. I'm like I got to talk about this at some point, and it's just.
Oh, it was a hoot. Someone
that's
just posted
the
it.
Opportunity.
Yeah, someone just like put it on Instagram this July 4th, and
it's tradition.
Yeah.
Do you remember any other fun promo-y things? There was a lot going on at that time. I wasn't involved in a lot of it, but there were apparently like great big stunt events and all kinds of funny promo-y things happening.
I remember there was this like baby contest, and it was it was in 2005, and my niece had just been born in January of 2005, and so there was this email sent out to the office like, if any of you have like babies, like really young, you know, like babies, and you want to send in your pictures for this summer contest, submit them. And so like I was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna get my niece in there, and then, you know, so and so else from the office submitted, and someone else, and then my now husband Jamie, his nephew had just been born in May of that same year, and so we like threw him in, and he got chosen, and my niece didn't get chosen.
Oh no!
Durham H from Hillsborough.
Wait, what did they get chosen for?
Like they just got
what's the prize?
thrown up on the screen, a picture of them, and it was like Durham H from Hillsborough, Oregon, and they'd say your name, like the Smucker's jar for the Today Show. And my niece didn't get chosen. I was so angry.
Is she mad today about it? She won't watch Yu-Gi-Oh?
She just texted me.
Triggered?
She's so triggered. She never watched the cartoon again. P.S. She went to college this year, so time has passed.
She's okay. We're not worried about her.
No.
Darren, you were directing Pokemon at the time that 4Kids lost the licensing rights to it. Is that correct?
Right.
What was that like?
Yeah, I did season 6, 7, and 8, which was awesome. It's like the most buttoned up scripts I've ever experienced. Like the team was just so slick, and like barely a word never changed. Like it was always like perfectly flapped. Anyways, that's a sidebar. But yeah, and then all of a sudden it was like, we're not gonna have the show anymore. And at first I didn't know what that meant, and then, you know, it turns out that it meant that there was a decision for people to make if they wanted to stay on with the other 4Kids properties. Then they that the show was going to another company and you can't perform that role with that other company, so you kind of had to.
But is that because of a contract clause? From what I understand, something called a sunset clause. So you couldn't use your voice somewhere else to perform the role unless it was at 4Kids. Like if I played,
right,
I Mudkip, and then a company called and said, "Hey, can you reprise your role as Mudkip?" I would have to say, "No, my contract doesn't allow that."
Right. I assume it was so that like, you know, McDonald's commercial comes along and they want Mudkip in it, that you couldn't just like jump ship without 4Kids getting a cut. You know what I mean?
Right.
And like I know other networks sort of have similar things, and yeah, I'm sure Pegasus did too. I wasn't supposed to do Pegasus elsewhere, so you're kind of careful as to, you know, when you do the voice or not. Anyway, so I think that was the understanding, that you either stayed with the company and had to surrender those roles, which for people who had been doing it for 8 years and was their bread and butter was a tough call, and most people stayed loyal to 4Kids and decided to continue on with the shows they were working on as actors and also director, you know, in Eric's case. And then I forget what show I pivoted directly to, but I had another show at 4Kids ready to go right after that. It might have been Dinosaur King. Yeah,
that seemed to happen pretty quickly after, and a lot of people kept similar type roles in that show as they had in Pokemon.
Yeah, Veronica and Rachel and Eric were all on that show. I mean, Eric played an old scientist geezer guy. So
what was the mood like? And you weren't the one who had to tell the cast that it wasn't continuing, right? For them, at least.
No, I mean, I think at the time I was also working on booking the talent. It was sort of like, I forget whether the previous person had left, and they were like, "Darren, do you think you just pick this up?" So like I was, it was just so weird. I was also the guy who was like booking people. I mean, like, Tara, I'm gonna book you for 1 hour for blah blah blah. Anyway, so so I think it was, you know, everyone was spoken to individually, and I knew that I would be moving on to other projects, and yeah, most people decided to stay, and a couple people moved on and then no longer worked for 4Kids, unfortunately.
So it was sort of an unofficial understanding that if you broke your contract and went and worked somewhere else, then 4Kids would not be hiring you for subsequent voiceover roles.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what I understood.
I mean, that seems to be the version of events that I've heard as well. Again, there are other versions out there, and like I've said before, memory isn't perfect. Some people might have had different contracts at that company. I don't actually know. So
yeah, true.
We're all just speaking our truth.
And like Pokemon season 6, 7, 8, as much as I was really, you know, loved them, it wasn't its super highest ratings moment. So like I think there could have been a really good chance that the show just sort of faded into the sunset after that. And nobody really knew it was going to continue on for how many more years? Another 15 plus. And so, you know, we kind of just made our best guess. Again, I have no idea what hits and what doesn't. So we kind of just guessed what the future of it would be.
Yeah, I think for me it gets tricky because I'm very grateful for the work that 4Kids gave me, and the I feel like I had on the job training there. But I do think about the fact that there's other shows I've worked on where a studio has said, "Hey, we lost the job, but Godspeed, go continue. We don't want to cost you any work." And there's a world in which I wish 4Kids had said, you know, this is our loss, but it shouldn't also be your loss. You can continue to, given permission, you can go do the role. You can still work here. No hard feelings. This is business.
Yeah.
And that's the world that's the kumbaya world I wish I lived in.
I'm with you. I mean, if we put the actual show first and what it meant to the audience, and to have consistency and the same cast, you know, like I apply that to Yu-Gi-Oh now. If like you know, we're constantly doing video games where we're, you know, digging out characters from 20 years ago, and of course I want to use that actor. I want to find out where that person is, and okay, they live in Sweden now. Fine, let's hook them up and let's record this, just because it's for the children.
Well, nostalgia and the feels are a big deal to people. People love that familiarity.
Yeah, and it can also like eclipse the show, that people are then focused on the drama as opposed to, I think that's what happened. And like, for the sake of Pokemon, I'm glad they found a really solid new
Yeah.
cast to carry it on. And I guess maybe some young kids don't notice the change between the first 8 seasons and then the
Kids notice
ones after
voices.
that.
Steve, I mean, you can speak to
Yeah.
this. You notice voice changes, right? As a kid?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm a weirdo like that. But it's like I think like it happened all the time, and unfortunately, I you guys might be able to speak upon this better than I could, but I feel like voice acting is taken for granted, and so many roles are always recast carelessly.
Yeah.
But no, I maybe some other people couldn't, and there's definitely been times where maybe I didn't pick up on something right away. But no, as a kid, I could tell, like, especially with like anime too, sometimes a lot of companies would, change what studio they decided to produce the dubs at.
Right.
And I knew. It's like I was way too invested where I'd watch an episode one day, I'm like, no. And I'm like,
Yeah.
they're from somewhere else. But
Yeah, I don't know what kind of sort of, history or tension or emotions got involved in that breakup, but
Yeah.
like you said, it wasn't it was, I think, business based as opposed to
An
relying on
artistic decision
emotions
or an emotional.
yeah, exactly.
Thank you so much for speaking about that. You are one of the people who made the transition from working at 4Kids to working at what is now Konami. We haven't really talked extensively about the legalities of what we would love to get a lawyer on here to really explain what happened there and all that stuff business wise. What was it like from your point of view during all of this transition time?
Yeah, I mean, you could sense like things were winding down, like a show would end and then another show, which would usually be there to like take its place, wasn't, and so we all kind of knew the writing was on the wall, and I think a director or two had left or just been let go because the show had ended, and I kind of sensed my time was coming. Like, I remember like by the time I officially got talked to, like, Norman actually came into my office, which was like so sweet of him to do, and like my posters were down, I had 2 full bags ready to go. Like, I knew it was over. And the very last thing I worked on was the Ninja Turtles movie. There was a movie where like our turtles, and then there were like turtles from the original, and then turtles from the actual graphic novel or a comic book type thing. Anyway, so that was the last project, and I kind of knew as soon as that was over. And sure enough, like the next day or a couple days later, Norman came in and was like, yeah. we're gonna have to let you go. So I knew it was happening, and like there was only maybe one other show, Go-Go Riki, I think, still going, plus Yu-Gi-Oh, which I think was Julie Rath directing that at the time. I think maybe Yu-Gi-Oh 5Ds I think was happening at the time. Anyways, so I knew, and yeah, it's kind of where I thought the chapter ended. I remember sending an email out to all the actors I'd worked with, just thanking them and knowing that I was moving on to the next thing. And little did I know that, like, I don't know, 6 months later, I was asked back to direct Yu-Gi-Oh 5Ds, but in like a freelance capacity, which I've been ever since. So I'm not a full-time employee there. I get paid, per episode or whatever, and direct that way. So within months I was back, and for better for worse, I had more time to do theater, which I did, and got my healthcare somewhere else. And
voice? Were you teaching voice for a while? I remember you doing that, and I always wanted to study with you.
Yeah, I taught like singing lessons for a while. Just sort of fell into that, and did that for a few years, I guess, which I enjoyed. And then I teach animation voiceover now, which I've taught for a long time, and I still teach it now. I teach it over Zoom, but it's been great. I love doing it. I feel like all my family are teachers, so it's kind of, it's in me, I think, and it's been a great way to find new actors to work with. So
yeah, it kind of combines all of your skill sets, which is cool. I love when people find the right job for themselves.
Yeah, and like being a multi-hyphenate is important, you know, and I think that's what I am.
Without getting too into the weeds and the businessy stuff of it all, I want to explain the transition from 4Kids to Konami being in that space, because I think it's interesting from a business point of view. So whatever you know about it, again, we don't have to go into too much detail.
Yeah, I mean, I remember hearing, you know, echoes of there being, and I think it was the Lehman Brothers thing. There were like financial issues that were causing the company to you know, to change its name and to sort of, you know, start over. And it then became 4K for a while, which whatever that means. And I think I was kind of a little aloof to it all. By that time I was freelance and I was like, okay, as long as like the 5Ds is still going, and then 5Ds was followed by Zexal, and Zexal was followed by, anyways, I've been working on it ever since, that somehow the company, you know, stayed afloat, and they scaled back their staff, you know, dramatically. They kept the office there, you know, got rid of a wing of it, and it's definitely like more pared down as far as the number of people that work there, but it's still going. And then all of a sudden, you know, got its new name. What's it called now? Konami Cross Media, or something like that.
And Konami, so Konami always had the rights to Yu-Gi-Oh. Is that am I correct in that? And then that they licensed it out to 4Kids and then took the license back. Is that correct?
I think that's correct. Steve, do you know?
It feels like from what I've read upon, it feels like a similar, not completely similar, but like what happened with Pokemon was, you know, Pokemon kind of made their own company stateside to handle this, and I think it looks like that's what Konami did. Like I said, we always love to get some lawyers on here or someone else with that expertise. But from what I've read upon, in a nutshell, that's kind of what happened. Because, despite with with 4Kids kind of folding, Yu-Gi-Oh was still very prominent, and you know just as well as I do that it was still on TV, and there was still money in that banana stand. So I think it was Konami's best
That's
interest.
a great reference.
Yeah.
Do you know how many episodes of television you've directed, Darren? Is it an insane number?
That's funny. Like I guess thousands. Like I'm not sure. I mean, since maybe on average there's one episode a week, right? That I would direct if I'm directing just one show. If I'm directing two shows, then times 20 years, 52 weeks.
That's a lot of television.
That's a lot. Yeah, it is crazy, right?
Darren has, Steve, I should point this out. Steve has an encyclopedic knowledge of One Piece. Darren has an encyclopedic knowledge of movies and like the Oscars.
The Oscars, yeah.
You're like I feel like I want to just yell out a year and you tell me what won Best Picture. Can we play that game?
Sure.
1957.
1957 was Bridge on the River Kwai, which I've never seen. But
okay, now Steve, episode 17 of One Piece. No, I'm just kidding. I won't do this to you, but yeah.
So you're a One Piece guru. That's crazy.
Yeah, that's kind of how I got. Part of the reason why I got brought into the fold here doing this podcast, and
oh my god,
yeah, it's that's my curse, I guess. But
no, it's great.
I think I played like an emu or an ostrich or something who just made noises.
Okay, yeah, there was an ostrich for an episode.
Yeah, I think that was.
I could say you were a bartender. I remember very very piratey voice.
Thank you. There you go.
No, I think like you definitely you were chewing up the scene there. I'm pretty sure. If I could guess, you were just given the direction. It's a pirate show, and you're like, I got this. And you did this
I really got this for sure.
Exactly. Yeah.
Before we let you go, and since we're on One Piece, I've spoken to some actors about this. At the time when I was working there, I did not know I didn't know things were being edited out. I didn't know what I was seeing was heavily redacted or whatever, edited, and I didn't know about any of the backlash. Were you aware, being someone who worked in the office, did you know about that?
Yeah, and there's so much like, I don't know, animosity about it, but like honestly, I feel like if 4Kids could have kept any of those things, they would have.
Mm-hmm.
That everything was in compliance with the network that was airing the show, and like, of course you can't have a character smoking a cigarette,
right?
You know what I mean? And like it's the network that dictates, like, no, we can't see bullets come out of that. Red blobs have to come out of that gun, or like that cleavage is looking a little apparent. You know what I mean? If we could have pushed the envelope and like gotten away with that stuff, you know, and to this day I know that we do push back. I see it where one person's like, I think we should change this, and some person's like, no, he didn't actually hit him, he just like, you know, shoved him on the shoulder. We should be able to keep that. Like, there is constant, you know, pushback, and I think it's just easy for people to blame 4Kids for, you know, being too conservative, when I really don't think that's. I think it lies with the network.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't realize though that funky cops were allowed to have their guns. Now, do you think that's because they were cops?
I think it's what came out of the guns. Like, this sounds silly, but like often it's like, as long as it doesn't look like an actual bullet, we might be okay.
I'm gonna have to watch it, but I thought you just couldn't have a gun at all.
I have like next to no memory of that show either, but it might have just been like, oh, they could have a gun in a holster, but you know, maybe they can't go around shooting it.
But also, fighting Foodons, he was playing with knives. Like,
but there was a hot dog cowboy where they had to replace his 6-shooters with ketchup and mustard bottles.
This is good stuff. I forgot about that.
But I will say, but with Yu-Gi-Oh though, Yu-Gi-Oh was subjected to tons of those edits. But I from my observation, I think the Yu-Gi-Oh dub has kind of stood the test of time, and it's beloved. You know, like, there are a bunch of changes, but I think people, and it's a dub that has a lot of name changes and all that, but people associate those characters with those names, those voices, and I think that's a testament to what you guys did on that show.
Yeah, I'm going to give Darren credit, and also you've said such nice things about Lloyd Goldfine, and you've said that the things he worked on really ended up being very quality, and hopefully we'll get to talk to him soon. Yeah, I think he
has a great sense of humor as a person, and I think he's such a child at heart, still is, and had such a passion for turtles. Turtles was his baby, that he brought it to life. So I thought everything he worked on was really high caliber.
Yeah. Oh, Darren, we'll let you live your life, but I could talk to you. Well, you know, I could talk to you all day, but
I love those. Let's do it. I got time.
Let's do it. Well, you know what's funny? As we were talking, an email came in. I'm seeing if Susie sent this to both of us. Like, just to go back to your point of the kinds of emails that we receive. While we were talking, Susie forwarded me this email that she got from someone random asking if she voiced a specific Pokemon. Chimicho? I don't even know who that is. But like, this is par for the course. Chimecho. Oh, sorry. See, I'm the worst. Now, Darren, because he remembered that I played Mudkip and I didn't, maybe you would know if Susie voiced that character.
I mean, I don't. It rings a bell, and no pun intended. Chimecho. But if I heard it, I could tell you who it was. But you did not believe it was Mudkip. That was you for a long time.
No, until you sent me a clip, and I still think it maybe was a role well, maybe I didn't share it. I don't know. It's very Darren, don't you wish we took notes?
To this day, I wish there were more files on who played what character, because it's like, it's always a scramble to be like, I think that sounds like Mark Thompson. Yeah.
And that's where people like me come in, who just who dedicate too much space in their brain to
Geek Squad. Yeah. I told Steve that he could just raise his hand and say Geek Squad whenever he wants to interject.
Nerd alert.
I love that. But what's on the internet isn't necessarily right. Like, everyone's like, oh, you played Xander and Dinosaur King. I didn't, and I correct as many people as I can, but
Well, I've started now submitting to IMDb whenever I do know that something is wrong, because I just don't want to disappoint a fan at a convention who's brought a picture of something, or, and then I have to listen to it, find it, and then I just feel like I'm disappointing them.
You want to disappoint them in different ways.
Exactly. Yeah.
And we do.
Oh, Darren.
Oh, I love you guys.
What are you going to have for lunch, Darren? Or what did you have for lunch?
Oh my gosh. I didn't have lunch. I might just have this sounds, I'm going to have a protein shake and I'm going to go to the gym.
Oh,
and then I'll have
worst
a big
answer
dinner.
ever.
I know. What a prick.
What are you currently watching on TV, more importantly? Because I'd like to know what you're watching.
I am enjoying the RuPaul's Drag Race UK Season 5. Is a couple episodes in, and it's good.
Okay.
I'm watching the new season of British Bake Off, which is fine. I'm that guy who still watches Survivor.
Oh, interesting. You're the
Yeah.
one.
I'm the one, and this season is full of so many unlikables. It's really
This
one to root for.
episode probably will air much later, so this might be dated. But I do always love to compare notes with Darren about what to watch.
Yeah. Do you have anything I should be checking out?
Well, my guilty pleasure is Love Is Blind on Netflix. Like if I'm gonna watch trash TV, yeah.
Is that where they? What is it?
It's a dating show. It's more horrible people. Just
Are they blind in some way? Like they're blindfolded or something?
They don't get to see. So they're in pods. So they date separately in pods. So they never see each other, and they have to propose sight unseen. And then they spend a week together on a honeymoon, and then they move them in together. And then at the end of the whatever the time frame is, they pay for their wedding, and then you wait to see at the altar if they both say yes.
So they might say no.
Oh, it happens. It's season 4 or 5 or something. Darren, please watch it. Oh, there's an airplane.
That'd be so sad.
Yeah, that's
Steve.
That's
Steve.
too much anxiety for me.
Yeah,
Yes.
tell me something good to watch, Steve.
Oh God, I'm too busy.
He watches everything.
No, I'm too busy
anime-wise.
going back and revisiting some 4Kids shows now and catching up on my other things. God, I don't watch too much new TV right now. I'm especially and seeing what the taste is in the room. No, I don't watch too much reality TV either, so I can't.
Well, okay,
I can't give you a juicy morsel here.
I have a suggestion for you. Because everyone is very good looking, so I know Darren will like this show.
Shallow
I
Darren.
just started Friday Night Lights.
Oh, never seen it.
And I hate sports. Even Ted Lasso has too much sports for me. I love the football in this show. Who knew?
Wow.
Yeah. I cheerleaded for football and never learned how the game was played. That's how
You were a cheerleader.
that's how allergic I am to sports. But I'm telling you, this show's so good, Darren. All the feels.
Maybe I'll try. I mean, I don't like to feel too deeply, but
Yes, you do.
No, I'm a shallow bitch.
Oh, on that note, thank you to our shallow bitch friend, Darren Dunstan, for spending his morning, afternoon with us.
Thank you for having me. You're both delightful.
But who's more delightful? I'm just kidding. All right, Darren. Thank you for being here. Oh, that Darren Dunstan.
Delightful.
My real mission is to get him to move to Los Angeles so that I can see him and his husband more because they're the best.
Well,
My other mission. Oh, sorry.
I was about to say, I don't think we can make that a tier in our Patreon, but
I think that would be cool. Or a GoFundMe. My other goal, which I keep forgetting to mention, and I want to make sure I say it a few times, is that we would love to talk more about the lawsuits that happened at 4Kids and some of the inner workings of the businessy things that we are not experts on. So if you are a lawyer who worked at 4Kids, or you just you are a lawyer and happen to know a lot about that stuff, or the businessy stuff, because, I think that interests me. I kind of like to know that. Please hit us up at 4kidsflashback@gmail.com if you have some expertise you can share with us. And hopefully we'll get that explained by a person who's smarter than I am.
Get a serious episode out there. No.
Yeah, on a very special episode.
Get the Law and Order
Dun dun dun.
chimes. Yeah.
Yeah.
But no, that's definitely some really important stuff about the history of this company, but stuff I don't feel qualified to be like, yeah, I got this. I can explain this.
Totally. And there are some articles that explain it, and even reading them, I'm like, I just want someone to talk slowly and explain it. Because it is interesting from an entertainment point of view, from just, I know we talked about, too, like 2008, the finances of the world, like that definitely affected the company. But what did finally cause this company to not be able to function? We have heard unofficially things like that Chaotic just cost too much and was just not a moneymaker. Things like that. I don't think it was solely losing the Yu-Gi-Oh and Pokemon licenses. I think it's a couple different factors, but I'd love to know from someone who understands it.
Absolutely.
So that's my plea.
It's like piggybacking off of our good friend Darren Dunstan.
Yes, sorry, Darren, to end this episode with a plea for a lawyer.
Well, you could thank Darren for being a friend. So.
You knew a Golden Girls reference.
I know.
Thank Darren for
I've
being
absorbed
a
some
friend.
things.
Yeah, all right. Well, new respect. On that note, thank you guys for listening. If you've listened this long and far, you know what to do to go to Patreon and the website, and I won't bore you anymore with that. Steve, any final parting thoughts, words, ideas?
Thank you to anyone who's kicking us back some money on Patreon. We appreciate that. And yeah, if you really don't know what's going on, yeah, just go check us out on there. Go find our website. Keep listening to us on wherever you listen to a podcast.
Oh, and if you want to be a really good friend, you could give us a 5-star review on the app you listen to. You could give us thumbs up on our YouTube accounts. You could write a nice review. I mean, what else do you have to do today? Seriously.
Come on.
Show some love. All right, guys, that wraps it up for today. We'll
catch you next time.
4Kids Flashback is a production of Maji Media, hosted by Tara Sands and Steve Yurko.
Producers are Zach Logan, Tara Sands, and Steve Yurko.
For more information, go to 4kidsflashback.com. That is the number 4. And if you worked at 4Kids and have a story you want to share, please email us at 4kidsflashback@gmail.com.
You can find us on social media at 4Kids Flashback, and to listen early and ad-free, head to patreon.com/4kidsflashback. For podcast merchandise, find links on our website and Linktree.
As they say on every podcast, if you liked this show, please subscribe, rate, and review, and tell your friends, or 4. If you want to check out other Maji Media podcasts, go to maji.media. Thanks for listening.